From Pacifica, this is Democracy Now! In two classified cables to President Obama, the U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan, Carl Eikenberry, warns against sending in more troops to Afghanistan. Today, in a Democracy Now! Exclusive, we look at how the U.S. funds the Taliban. A new report in The Nation magazine reveals the U.S. government's funneling millions of dollars to finance the very same insurgent forces that U.S. soldiers are fighting. Then, is the EPA trying to silence criticism from within?
Cap and trade will not create confidence that clean energy will become profitable, and so it will not ignite the huge shift in investment needed to begin the clean energy revolution.
After two EPA attorneys speak out against cap and trade in an online video, the agency orders the two to remove or edit it or face disciplinary action. The two attorneys will join us from Berkeley. Then William Kunstler, disturbing the universe.
He fought for civil rights with Martin Luther King Jr. and represented activists protesting the Vietnam War. When the inmates took over Attica Prison, or Native Americans stood up to the federal government at Wounded Knee, they asked my father to be their lawyer.
A new documentary by the daughters of the famed lawyer, the late William Kunstler. They take an in-depth look at their father. All that and more coming up. Welcome to Democracy Now!, democracynow.org, the War and Peace Report. I'm Amy Goodman. The U.S. ambassador to Afghanistan's warning against sending more troops to fight in the Afghan war. In a last-minute dissent, Ambassador Carl Eikenberry sent two cables this week, casting doubt on a troop escalation until the Afghan government addresses corruption and other internal problems. Eikenberry also criticized the lack of aid and development money allotted for Afghanistan. His request to increase non-military spending by 60% has gone unheeded so far. Eikenberry delivered the warning right before President Obama's War Cabinet held a critical meeting Wednesday on proposals to send up to 40,000 additional troops. Eikenberry was appointed earlier this year after retiring from a military career that included commanding U.S. forces in Afghanistan in 2006 and 2007. Eikenberry's warning comes as a new poll shows a majority of Americans continue to oppose a troop escalation in Afghanistan. The CNN Opinion Research Corporation survey found 56% of respondents are against a new troop deployment. 58% say they're opposed to the war overall. As the administration discussed sending more troops to Afghanistan, President Obama visited Arlington National Cemetery to take part in a Veterans Day ceremony.
For the better part of a decade, they have endured tour after tour in distant and difficult places. They have protected us from danger, and they have given others the opportunity for a better life. So to all of them, to our veterans, to the fallen, and to their families, there's no tribute, no commemoration, no praise that can truly match the magnitude of your service and your sacrifice.
In Iraq, the Iraqi Interior Ministry says it's probing allegations the private military firm Blackwater authorized around $1 million to bribe Iraqi officials following the September 2007 killings of 17 Iraqi civilians in Baghdad. The New York Times revealed this week that payments were approved after the Iraqi government called for Blackwater's expulsion from Iraq, threatening the company's lucrative annual contract. It's unknown if any Iraqi officials ultimately accepted the payments. Meanwhile, former Blackwater Vice President Cofer Black has denied an account from other former company executives that he confronted Blackwater founder Eric Prince about the bribes. In a statement, Black said he was, quote, unaware of any plot or guidance for Blackwater to bribe Iraqi officials. In other Iraq news, an influential American diplomat is facing growing scrutiny for standing to profit from oil interests in Iraq's northern Kurdish region. Peter Galbraith was a key advisor to the Iraqi-Kurdish government during 2005 negotiations for a national constitution. Galbraith helped the Kurds win provisions assuring control over oil wealth free from the central government in Baghdad. But last month, a Norwegian newspaper revealed Galbraith stands to make over $100 million from interest in a Norwegian oil company and a stake in a potentially lucrative Kurdish oil field in northern Iraq. Galbraith worked for the oil company DNO at the same time as he took part in the talks on Iraq's constitution. He's been a leading advocate for decentralizing the Iraqi government and dividing the country along ethnic lines. Galbraith recently made headlines over his dismissal from the UN mission in Afghanistan after accusing his superiors of covering up electoral fraud. You can go to our interview with Peter Galbraith at democracynow.org. In Honduras, the Obama administration is facing growing criticism for the apparent collapse of an agreement to resolve the Honduran political crisis. The ousted president, Manuel Zelaya, says the U.S. has undermined its pledge to seek his return to office. Last week, Assistant Secretary of State Thomas Shannon said the U.S. would recognize upcoming elections even if Honduran lawmakers refuse to restore Zelaya. On Wednesday, top U.S. diplomat Craig Kelly left Honduras after failing to revive the unity agreement. Earlier, Kelly had said negotiations are still moving forward.
We are moving forward with the talks. We think it is very important for the dialogue to advance. We had a good meeting with President Zelaya and with Mr. Micheletti to encourage continuing talks. We think that the solution for the Honduran people is partly in the election, but we move forward with maximum international support, and that this be done through the Tegucigalpa-San Jose Agreement. It's important the two sides continue talking, and we are here to support that process.
In Israel and the occupied territories, Palestinians mark the 5th anniversary of the death of former PLO and Palestinian Authority President Yasser Arafat Wednesday. Speaking in Ramallah, Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas said Israel's continued occupation of the West Bank and expansion of settlements there prevents any hope of a two-state solution.
We are demanding the vision of a two-state solution. They are disfiguring it. They are putting obstacles before it. They are trying to remove this concept from our route. What do they want?
Abbas recently announced he won't seek another term when Palestinians hold national elections early next year. A new study says unsafe abortions are putting an additional financial burden on struggling health systems in Africa and Latin America. The Guttmacher Institute says the treatment of complications from unsafe abortions results in up to $280 million in extra costs each year. Back in the United States, a new report says an overly strict enforcement of national anti-terrorism laws is leading to unwarranted denials or delays for thousands of applications for political asylum or residency. According to Human Rights First, more than 18,000 refugees and asylum seekers have been rejected or had their cases indefinitely delayed since 2001, despite no evidence of terrorist activity. Nearly half those cases remain unresolved. A top pharmaceutical market analysis firm is predicting the drug industry is set to reap a massive windfall from its secretive deal with the White House and Senate Democrats on health care reform. Earlier this year, the Obama administration agreed to oppose using government leverage to lower drug prices in return for drug industry pledges to reduce costs by up to $80 billion. A new study by drug industry trade group IMS Health predicts the deal will result in a sales increase of over $137 billion over the next 4 years. The IMS study predicts healthcare reform, quote, could lead to higher price branded products. Democratic Senator Chris Dodd has unveiled a proposal to consolidate bank regulators into a single oversight agency. Dodd's plan would eliminate the 4 separate bodies that oversee the nation's more than 8,000 banks and create a new consumer protection watchdog. Speaking in Washington, Senator Dodd said the measure would address the regulator gaps that led to the nation's financial collapse.
Our proposal will replace the myriad government agencies that failed, in my view, to rein in the risky schemes with a single, accountable federal banking regulator. We will end, for all time, I hope, too big to fail. Those words should only be used again in historical context. We cannot allow the collapse of a few firms